psychology, and it's the first time I sat in a lesson basically in my life and thought, wow, it's actually interesting what they're saying. I'm definitely someone that is vulnerable to being a dopamine addict in all the different ways. Like, I've had plenty of experience with drugs and alcohol, and dopamine is it almost is getting like a bad rep. It's basically the molecule that is totally responsible for all of our drive and our motivation. When I go and train schools, I'm training schools in Switzerland at the moment, so I go there each week, and I've seen average daily screen times, just for context, average daily on the phone, this is 14, 15-year-olds, 21 hours a day. The naked girls thing is something that's so important to talk about. More than that, I just say, like, sex is something that it is a really enjoyable experience as a human being. Like, it's one of the most desired experiences we have as a human being. Even when the word porn comes out of my mouth, you just see the whole audience. Like, I was training a company all day yesterday, and you see the whole audience just like, oh, what the fuck, why is he talking about that? Oxytocin is the connecting molecule. Yeah, so I co-found this company called Neurify, and these are these neuroscience-based training experiences for... Originally, we did this all for companies and schools, so I've trained lots of companies and schools across the UK, across lots of places now in Europe and stuff like that.
Yeah, good to see you. Where I like to start the episodes is right at the beginning of your journey with your mind and mental health. So when did you first understand what mental health was?
Yeah, it's a good question, that. I think I definitely experienced challenges in my mind in my younger years and stuff like that, but I don't think I'd ever heard properly of the term mental health, probably until I was 18, 19 sort of age, maybe about 6 years ago. I think I heard about it as more of a concept. I'd experienced anxieties and stuff, but yeah, mental health, I'd probably say about 6 years ago.
I guess, when was your first bad experience with your mental health?
So mine's actually pretty young, to be honest. When I was about 5 years old, developed OCD and experienced OCD for about 3 or 4 years, and had a number of different kind of obsession, compulsive type stuff in my behavior. And my mum actually handled it in a very, very clever way. I kind of never discovered I had it, and I started going to brain training, effectively. That was in quotation marks for people listening. I'd go to brain training outside of school, where I was effectively getting taught how to manage these different OCDs that I was developing. But I never knew I had a problem. I thought I was having some cool thing that I was getting to go and do. And it did begin to fade off. And it's something I still am now, have the side effects of being very organized and stuff like that, liking things in a particular way. But yeah, my first kind of experience of anxieties and stuff in my head was quite young.
Just for those who aren't that well versed with OCD, how does that? I guess, what is it for those who don't know, and how has it impacted your kind of day-to-day life over the years?
Typically, I mean, OCD can vary massively between individuals, but you'll have some kind of obsessive tendency, and then you'll be maybe obsessed with doing something, and there's a compulsion that comes with it. And my very young mind had almost natural fears and anxieties of what if my parents died, or what if my family died, or my house burnt down, or these kind of things that can happen as you start to come into cognitive thinking around that sort of 5 to 10 age. But I then have a thought in my head. I'd be lying in bed in the night and think, if I don't go and turn the light on and off in the garage, then this will happen, and that my brain could believe that to be true. So it developed these kind of compulsions to do these different behaviors, which obviously, going downstairs in the middle of the night when you're a kid is terrifying. It's still terrifying now, to be honest. And yeah, I had these different anxieties that developed, that often with OCD, they're almost natural fears, or ways in which we are designed to be as a human. They just get exacerbated to a point where it's kind of malfunctioning a little bit. So yeah, that's what happened when I was younger. And then, yeah, very fortunately, it kind of began to fade out.
Okay, so it doesn't kind of impact you as much now as an adult.
No, definitely, it reduced a lot. I learned a lot of different strategies as to when these moments happen, how you calm it down. So that helped a lot. I got very, very into golf during this time. I recently tried to become a professional golfer. That was my early dream, and the golf kind of gave me something to really put all of my OCD type attention into. So yeah, it doesn't really affect me now. The only thing that affects me now is sometimes when I'm leaving the house, I get an OCD about whether I've locked the front door. I don't know if lots of people get that, and I'll think, did I lock it? And I'll go back and check it or something like that, even though I knew I locked it. So that's about the last thing that's holding on.
I went on to study neuroscience, and how has your journey with mental health evolved as you've gone on to study in higher education and onwards and learn more about the brain?
Yeah, I would say as I've understood it more and studied it more, I've definitely become much more familiar with my own mental health. Like I'm a lot more aware of when my mind is like a bit anxiousy or overthinky, or if my mood is low. So I've become more aware of it for sure. But as I've become more aware, I've embedded a lot of different strategies that help me to not spend as much time in lower places. So it's kind of like I'm more aware of it, but I'm definitely behaving in a way that's much better for my head these days.
Okay. And what was it that inspired you to actually go into the field of neuroscience? Was there any particular kind of trigger?
Yeah, it's interesting. I really wanted to go into psychology. Like I always just found psychology super interesting. I did a lot of sports psychology when I was doing the golf thing. I had like a sports psychologist and stuff like that. And then chose to do it at college. And college, like when I was 16, it's the first time I'd studied psychology. And it's the first time I sat in a lesson basically in my life and thought, wow, it's actually interesting what they're saying. Because like I just didn't really fully connect with the school thing. I loved being at school. I just didn't like the lessons too much. And discovered psychology. I was like, wow, it's actually really interesting understanding humans. And then at the exact same time, we had a like pretty crazy few years as a family. We lost like 5 people that were pretty close to us in our family in like a space of 5 years, and some of them were quite young. So like suddenly, like my mind matured a lot very quickly because it was like a lot to take on. And it's the same time I was studying psychology, and I found myself intuitively like connecting, even though I'm the youngest in my family, connecting with them in quite a good way and sharing different bits of guidance on how we're handling these situations that had come up. And I just kind of found that I had just like a innate act within the psychology world. So then I pursued psychology at university, and then really, I think it was just I found YouTube videos and stuff on dopamine like 4 or 5 years ago and thought, wow, dopamine's super interesting. Maybe I should start understanding neuroscience better. And that fascination as to what was the main trend at the moment was really what drove me into neuroscience. And then neuroscience is just continuing to absolutely boom. And I think it's like definitely the big next wave in psychology. So yeah, that's kind of what attracted me in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. Was there any particular bit you studied which you really just thought, holy fuck, that's like that's my jam. That's the topic I want to go deep on.
I would say, yeah, definitely the dopamine thing was the thing that like caught my eye massively, because I'm definitely someone that is vulnerable to being a dopamine addict in all the different ways. Like I've had plenty of experience with drugs and alcohol and all of these kind of things that are very dopaminergic. From a very young age, I always wanted to go against the grain and like go and smoke a cigarette or do whatever it was that was like a dopamine based thing. And when I discovered it, and I already knew like I was innately a little bit more on the addicted side to this stuff, I thought, wow, maybe this sort of stuff could make me understand my dopamine and then get off of that stuff and get super driven and focused and motivated. Because at a similar time that I was discovering this stuff, I was kind of thinking, I kind of have done the party thing now and I'm ready to step into building a career and stuff like that. And yeah, dove deep into dopamine. I can't even imagine how many videos I watched on that topic. And now it is like what I spend all my time teaching about. So yeah, I'd say that was the main thing that was my jam.
And were you partying at the same time you were learning about the brain?
I was, yeah. And I was definitely still partying, but there was like this period, I don't know, about 3.5 years ago where I like had decided one evening that I had completed the party thing. Like I just had reached a point one evening where I thought, okay, I think my brain is done with this. And at that time, yeah, I've been there. And at that time I then was like, in the 3 months that followed, it was a summer holiday off of university that followed. And in that 3 months, I like went the opposite direction. I went and lived like out in a house that was near nature and just like came off of alcohol and like just was super healthy for like 3 months. And then like during that period, I studied super hard. And then like I really reaffirmed that I wanted to go in a little bit of a different direction.
I've heard dopamine said loads of times, and I've listened to podcasts where it's been described. But if you turned it around on me and said, "What's dopamine?" I wouldn't have any words for you. So I guess, what is dopamine and how does it impact us?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because dopamine is it almost is getting like a bad rep, because people like, yeah, I know that porn is dopamine or TikTok is dopamine or vaping is dopamine or whatever it may be, but dopamine is actually like this molecule that's absolute heaven when it's experienced in the right way. And it's basically the molecule that is totally responsible for all of our drive and our motivation in our life. It's the one creating your desire to do absolutely everything that you're desiring to do, to get out of bed, to go and exercise, to go and cook your lunch, to do your work, to sit there and study, whatever it is, dopamine is the thing that's giving you the drive. And if you took it back to like hunter-gatherers, like what we were for 400,000 years before we've come up with this new idea of how we live, the dopamine would basically come into a hunter-gatherer's brain, especially you get a surge in the morning, first thing when the bright light comes up, and it'd motivate them to go and hunt for food or forage for food or build shelter or like look for new places that they could live, whatever it may be. So the dopamine comes in, creates some driving energy. Then in the pursuit of the goal, the pursuit of hunting, or whilst you're building or whatever it may be, dopamine continues to build so that you feel good whilst you're doing these things. And then again, you get a bit of a dopamine surge on completion of the task. So that's kind of how dopamine works. And the most important thing to understand about it is how it was designed biologically. Whatever designed the system, God, evolution, whatever created us, basically made it that we have to put in effort to feel good. That's how they designed it. So we'd have to put in effort to go and hunt or build shelter or whatever it may be. And then it would reward us with this dopamine stuff. And it's designed that way just because life was like extremely difficult. It's so hard to stay alive in that cold weather with all those like predators and stuff like that. So we needed something to make effort feel really good effectively. And that's what dopamine did. And then in the last like 100 years, we've basically come up with a lot of ways in which we can short circuit this dopamine thing and make ourselves feel really good, but with no effort before. So your TikTok feed and your porn and all that kind of stuff. And what that basically does, instead of dopamine going on these nice gentle up and down curves, earning your dopamine, then it calms down, then you earn your dopamine, you effectively spike it really high. And anything that spikes really high has to crash really low in order to get back to balance. And that's the difficult we have. We basically have effort, then pleasure is great. Pleasure, no effort, crashes the dopamine, leads to things like anxiety, depression, these kind of things if we do it too much.
Yeah, I've got a question. So what I'm currently battling with is like I've had to delete it this morning because I was like, I can't go into this conversation knowing that I should have deleted TikTok. But basically, I haven't been able to shake it for the last month or so, being like at least an hour a day on it, which is a lot over a week, a lot of short videos. And I think because I've got a good mindset in that, even if I'm not feeling up to it, I will just kind of work anyway or work harder. But it just seems like after I go on TikTok, my energy is just sapped. Like it literally feels like I've just done the most intense thing. Even if I've been feeling really good coming into it, I just feel knackered after it. So is that a dopamine? I feel like I can't even. My energy just has been low recently, and nothing else has changed apart from my TikTok usage just skyrocketed. And I, can that play into it? Can that affect actual energy levels as such?
100%. Firstly, good awareness to see the connection, because it's super good when we start observing like how the behaviors connect with our energy and how we feel. And 100%, they're unbelievably connected. I'm also on TikTok, and I have the stupid justification that I can't delete any of these apps because I post on them, which is like very annoying because then I justify going on them unnecessarily. And how you basically imagine dopamine is your brain has the ability to build little dopamine vesicles, and they're effectively like a little bubble. Like if you imagine a really not swearing, really small bubble. Sorry, a really small bubble in your brain can stitch together these little dopamine bubbles. And everything that you do in your life that is effort, making your bed, brushing your teeth, going out for a walk, exercising, anything's effort, sitting down to work, is building these bubbles effectively to create drive and energy within us. And imagine you have a bucket in your brain. It doesn't work like this, but just so we can imagine. You have a bucket in your brain and you've built 100 of these bubbles in the last day. You got 100 bubbles there. And then you sit and go on TikTok, and effectively what these fast pleasure things do is rather than build the bubbles, they effectively burst the bubbles. So in the moment that they burst, it feels awesome. It's like dopamine in the brain streaming through. But say you go on TikTok for an hour, that 100 bubbles might go down to 50 or something. So you might have used up a load of that like driven energy that you've created by scrolling TikTok. The same happens when we drink alcohol. It feels really good, but the bubbles go down effectively. And when dopamine gets low, given it's our driving force and energy, we then lose it. And this is like one of the big challenges so many of us have, because we'll be like, I need to work, but I can't really be bothered right now because maybe you already scrolled in the morning. And then you like, okay, I'll just scroll for like 10 minutes. You sit there and you scroll and you kind of feel guilty as you do it, but you keep doing it because it's like super, super pleasurable for the brain. Not only are you not working, you're depleting the one resource that makes you want to work. So then like you get back to work and you think, oh, I can't really be bothered, and you can't really focus and that kind of thing. So yeah, 100% super connected.
Mm. Yeah, and I just feel like it's a weird. I started getting like weird compulsive behaviors. Like if I was walking up the stairs or in between going from room to room or going to the toilet at work, I would start pulling out my phone without even realizing and be scrolling, not even looking at it. It was so weird. That's why I was like, that's it. I deleted it because my brain is so I I get like super obsessed with things. Um, and that was just became a but it was I find it so crazy how an app can do that. It got to the point where I wasn't even in control of certain behaviors. My brain was just like it seen that loop that was giving it pleasure and just going like and it yeah.
100%. And I can't honestly, there are hundreds of millions of people in our world doing this right now. Like this is like one of the most common things in the world. When I go and train schools, I'm training schools in Switzerland at the moment. So I go there each week and I've seen average daily screen times, just for context, average daily on the phone. This is 14, 15 year olds, 21 hours a day. Yeah. 10 hours of TikTok, 8 hours of Instagram, 2 hours of YouTube shorts. So, like, this is proper addiction. Society has never had a product in the world that's as addictive as TikTok. Like, we have heroin and cocaine and these things, but you can't consume them 20 hours a day. Like, whereas TikTok, we can just about manage it. So, it's super normal. And there's this definition of addiction, which is basically the progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. And if you think about that, like say an alcoholic that's really into booze gets to the point where they only really feel when they're good when they drink the booze. So their experience of pleasure has been narrowed to alcohol. And in your case there, when you're beginning to like scroll in between every gap, it's because like TikTok's become the main source of pleasure. So then your brain is instinctively going to go towards it. And then the other side of that, when you come away from a lot of this addictive stuff, is the idea of the progressive expansion of the things that bring you pleasure. And then you start finding pleasure in like sitting on the sofa and having a cup of tea or like the basic stuff that we're kind of numb to now.
That yeah, I was definitely on the road. I was just being honest about it. I was starting to yeah. It's weird to admit, but it just is interesting. But that I was starting to think in certain situations. God, I can't wait until I can go on TikTok. My brain was just thinking like, oh my god, imagine what video is going to be on there next. I wonder when they're going to post next. And I was like, this is so not like this is so weird. And then I'd be like excited because I'd be like, oh, I know I'm going to have a spare hour where I'm going to be able to go on it. And that yeah, it's so odd how the brain can go down that. And it's almost like a slippery slope because you don't realize it's a negative thing because you do. My brain was just starting to make up different lies about why it was like, oh, I'm in marketing, I should be on TikTok, I should be out, I should like, and it starts giving me reasons why I can do it.
I think being honest about it with yourself is the most important thing because like I'm no different. Like let me see what my time on TikTok is today, for example. Okay. Oh, well, actually, I've only done 6 minutes today, which is pretty good. But I don't even remember those 6 minutes. Like, I would have thought I hadn't been on it yet today, and I've done 6 minutes and 23 minutes of Instagram. And I think just being honest with yourself, like I'm on here purely for pleasure, and I understand it's going to like slightly crash out my energy, and like then it's okay. Then at least you're being realistic with yourself. Whereas if you're lying to yourself, which is like I can do the same, I'll be like, oh no, I'm getting mental health inspiration or something. It's just not true. It's not true. Um, yeah, I appreciate the honesty, man, because honestly, so many people are doing the exact same.
What do you think there are going to be like long term, lasting like negative impacts on people because of TikTok and Instagram, or do you think it's a case of we can just adapt out of it and it's once you grow older and you realize it, you can just stop using it, or will there be ongoing impacts?
I definitely think there'll be ongoing impacts. I think we're just starting to see globally how bigger impact social media is having. Like the mental health situation as a society just wasn't what it is without social media. Like things are changing very fast, and like COVID changed mental health extremely quickly. And I don't believe that's just because the virus. I think it's very much largely because we all spent way more time on tech, basically. And I love the tech. Like I literally just went to the Apple shop and bought that new iPhone. I'm a tech nutter, but I'm just very aware that the tech is definitely causing difficulty. And I think, yeah, I think people's drive will progressively reduce. I think we'll see a big change with how we're interacting with this stuff when the current teenage generation enter the workforce, because they're going to really struggle with their drive and their ability to focus and stuff like that. And when the big employers begin to see, this stuff is actually screwing up our ability to make money, because like, unfortunately, it's kind of the way the world works. And they see like young people are really struggling with attention and drive and all these different things, mood and stuff. Then I think we might think, okay, we need to start finding some way to limit the usage. And like, it's very interesting. Like TikTok is a Chinese app, and they don't have TikTok in China. They have a different app. Like TikTok is just a Western built app, and their version of TikTok, you're limited per usage per age group. So like you'll get like 20 minutes a day if you're 13, and 25 minutes a day if you're 14, and stuff like that. And like we obviously are doing quite the opposite. That kids are banging 10 hours a day on it. So I don't want to follow a dictator style like role on social media, but it's almost like, what other choice do we have other than like trying to create limits on usage? I have to do it to myself. So yeah, definitely think there's going to be measurable impact.
Yeah, what I find, even with that the Facebook whistleblowing problem, where they found out that Facebook knew internally that young girls that had eating disorders, they were being shown more information and more content about that, and Facebook knew about it internally, because they're on, I guess, quarterly shareholder updates, and they've got to keep making profit and keep making money, and the way to make more money is people to spend more time and get exposed to more ads. So it seems like it's a bad place to be, especially when you've got loads of free time as a young person. Even just myself, I'm being honest, like the more time I spend on social media, the more time I'm like, I need to get in the gym more. So just like topless guys with six packs everywhere, or like nearly naked girls, and be like in the workplace. I'm like, that's inappropriate if I've just scrolled on that. And it's like, it's a lot for the brain to take in.
The naked girls thing is something that's so important to talk about, because like these girls, especially on TikTok, like they are so good looking that it's like very hard for our mind to manage it. And like they're dancing around and they do all their sexy stuff. And that is like the epitome of something that will spike your dopamine so high, because obviously like evolutionarily we're so wired to be attracted to like opposite sex or like whatever sex you're into. And it also is like a massive driver for then wanting to go and watch porn. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced it. You don't have to say if you've experienced it, but I'm sure lots of people have, where you're watching TikTok and you think, wow, she's pretty hot. And then it's like, oh, maybe I should go watch some porn, because it's kind of stimulated that thought pattern. And then you go and watch porn and then you really crash the dopamine. So it's a tricky world. It's a tricky world, mass consuming this stuff.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that description of like addiction before, but now I understood what porn addiction was, and the effects it can have, but just thinking of that narrowing what is where you get, was it? Yeah. And if these kids have been on porn and they're watching like HD 4K VR immersive shit, like for years on end, they're like, when they get to have sex for the first time, they're going to be like, it's awkward, the bodies are different. It's like, yeah, it's quite worrying to think.
It's really tricky, because I talk about the porn when I go in schools. I talk about the porn, and I don't want to be like the old boring guy that's like, don't watch porn, like it, because it's like you can so easily be perceived in that way. But I just try and explain to them. I of course say the dopamine stuff, because that's like the model of the training process I take them through. But more than that, I just say like sex is something that it like is a really enjoyable experience as a human being. Like it's one of the most desired experiences we have as a human being. And even me personally, I think like if you watch too much porn, when you have sex, like it actually is underwhelming, because it's like almost more stimulating when you masturbate, because like so much chaos is going on the screen. And then you have sex and it's like it has the awkwardness, and it's like things are just not as sexy when you have real sex. And I just say to them, like, if you really want to enjoy your sex when you're older, you really don't want to mass consume this stuff, because then you're just going to find all your sex underwhelming when you get older. And that's so shit, because like it's really nice to enjoy that experience.
Yeah, I definitely experienced it myself, and I've had to stop myself at times where it's been like every time I've gone to masturbate, I've reached for my phone and got up porn, and then, and I think I've been able to stop myself quicker because I've had friends that have shared their experiences of going like, you get into that cycle of going more down dark avenues of like porn categories, and you kind of need more and more extreme. Yeah, you need more and more extreme stuff. So I've been able to stop myself, but someone said it's like I think we said this. I said this in a conversation before. It's like a cocaine addict having walking around with cocaine in their pocket with like the fact that we have phones with like Wi-Fi and 3G where you can access porn in a split second. Because what enabled me to do is even if I wasn't feeling in the mood for it, I could do it because I knew it would spike my, I guess, dopamine. And if I was feeling down or just like in a bad mood, I just knew I could feel good for that moment. And then it's like a perpetual cycle. If you're struggling to get into a relationship or you're in a depressive mood, you can just keep spiking it and then that will cause lower lows. And yeah, it just, and because it's quite a taboo subject, you can't like just go to the pub and go, I've got like a really dark porn addiction. It's like everyone would be like, what?
Honestly, man, like when I talk about it in companies, even when the word porn comes out my mouth, you just see the whole audience. Like I was training a company all day yesterday. You see the whole audience just like, oh, what the fuck? Why is he talking about that? It's like, let's not talk about that. Let's pretend this is a secret, like what we have been doing for the last 10 years. But it's just one of those things. Like it is an awkward topic to talk about, and we got to talk about it. Like especially like men are watching much more porn than women are. Women do watch porn as well, but when you look at men's mental health is struggling really, really hard. A lot of men struggle with their drive and are struggling with depression and all this sort of stuff. And the porn is just this like underestimated factor that no one's considering. And I only know that because like I have watched lots of porn in my life. I discovered porn when I was a kid, and I was literally like, I remember I was like 12 years old or something, and I Googled a teacher's name at my school and then boobs because I thought maybe Google would show me that teacher's boobs, which is a ridiculous thing to think would happen on Google, but I've yet to understand the
Oh, I
internet.
love the creativity.
That was good creativity. And then I just suddenly stumbled across that world. And obviously, as a young kid, it was like, Jesus, this is pretty stimulating. And I actually cannot remember where I was going with that.
I mean, I can see why that'd be distracting thing if
I got
Google worked.
distracted by that whole story. I don't think I've ever even thought about that story since I've done it. But yeah, I'm gonna have to just. Where was I going with that?
Actually, that's what I was going to ask. I've heard that the number of men being a virgin under the age of 30 is increasing massively, and I think it was like the patent behind Viagra ran out or expired, and that's been the reason why like companies like Hims and these like fashionable direct to consumer Viagra brands basically under different names have popped up. And I think it's like this weird concoction of porn from a young age, Viagra being widely available online without having to go in store, and like dating apps combined is causing like this really weird system for men to deal with at the moment.
God, yeah, that is so. I mean, it kills me. Like some of these YouTubers I watch, like I watch some like American YouTube vloggers and stuff like that to like switch my brain off from mental health, and like kills me in the adverts when they do like an in video ad where they talk about, I think there's something called like swipes or something where like it just like is effectively like a Viagra product, and it's just so not a door you want to open because like once you open that door, like you're dependent on that product. And I do think it's like it's porn. It's like it's low self esteem is a really big thing. Like in general, social media is breeding low self esteem because you see everyone like looking great online, and you just like feel like not that good looking, and we worry about bodies and hair, and even something like hairline is such a thing now in our society. Worrying about hairline is so massive, even though men's hair has always receded a bit as you get into your adult years. And yeah, I think it's just like concoction porn, low self esteem, too much masturbation, this kind of stuff means that, like, in the moment, people are beginning to think they require these products.
Yeah, I guess one thing that just popped into my mind is that are we finally experiencing what women have for so long in terms of because men haven't been able to be accessed with this type of product for their perceived like deficiencies or like things they can that now we're getting hit with like hairline stuff, whereas before I guess girls could get extensions and now men can get like hairline pills. And I wonder if we're finally getting hit with what they've experienced for most of their life.
That is interesting because I say the hairline thing because that I now get marketed at like videos, people like redoing their hairline and stuff. And now I'm like looking in the mirror like, shit, is my hairline okay? And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. I've got the hair that I've got. Like, you just have to accept what you look like. It's like one of the most important things with mental health. And then it makes you analyze these things. So I guess, yeah, definitely is interconnected. The others, there's another side of this whole like porn, like low drive whole thing though, that I also think is men not doing enough stuff that's difficult and tough, basically physically, because testosterone really comes into play with this world. And like testosterone levels are also falling while sex drive is falling, unsurprisingly super interconnected. And really with testosterone, there's a lot of stuff. There's things like sunlight that affect it and sleep that affect it, which are really important. But doing tough stuff, running up hills, building stuff, throwing stuff, like all the stuff that hunter gatherers would have been doing all day, every day, it's like, how much do we really put ourselves in difficult environments now? And our bodies are just designed to be like in difficult, cold, windy environments, cold water, like all these different things that were hard to survive. And that sort of stuff gave us so much driving energy. And then now, like, we just so comfy all the time. It's like wake up in our comfy bed and stuff. I do like my comfy bed, but like never really do anything that's that difficult. And difficult stuff is just like so important for our drive and our mental health in general. And I think that's also like a corresponding factor.
What is it about doing, for example, running up hills, throwing stuff that actually is beneficial for us, or for the mind at least?
Well, it interconnects with like three of these main chemicals. Dopamine, because like you're earning the experience of feeling good effectively. Like when you finish, like you come back from like running up some hills out in the forest, so you're always going to feel good after that because your body is basically grateful for the fact it got you. So it's like, okay, thanks for that. I'll try and make you feel good.
Such an interesting way of phrasing it.
It basically is. I think of the body and the mind, there's like the body and the brain almost. It's like not actually together, like they're friends more. In my head, I see them as friends rather than just like one system. And then like I feel like I do things that are good for the body, and then the body will help my brain feel good. So, and if I do things in my mind, like calm myself down intentionally with breathing, that will make my body feel good. So I see them as like similar, like kind of connected things. So yeah, it's good for the dopamine, earning pleasure. It's very good for the endorphin system because if our body ever enters physical discomfort and pain, endorphins release into our system as a natural pain reliever. That's their function. Morphine, for example, as a drug, is built off our understanding of endorphins. And like, if we were like fighting a bear or something, I mean, you'd die pretty quick. But if you're fighting the bear as a little kid or something and you had a chance, then like when it scratched you, endorphins release. When you go into physical pain, you get this big stress relief in your system. And then testosterone. Anytime you're like putting yourself in some kind of competitive environment, like if you're trying to run up a hill and you're just like your body feels like it's under some kind of threat, testosterone will build because it's like, shit, what kind of danger am I facing? And the concoction of those chemicals, you feel more driven, you have like stress relief in your mind, so you feel calmer, and you feel like just like more man, effectively, just like more who you are than I think a lot of us feel now. I think a lot of us feel quite like gentle.
Yeah. What are endorphins? What's a kind of a
Yeah, they're built in what's called your pituitary gland. It's like in your hypothalamus in your brain, and they have this sole function to just reduce pain physiologically in our body or psychologically in our mind. And that's why we have them. Anytime our pain, anytime we're in like deep psychological stress or physiological stress, they just come in to optimize our chance of survival by taking that stuff away. So that like in a situation where you do like fight an animal or something, if it scratches you and you're just like, oh my god, that hurts so much, like obviously you're not really very focused on fighting the animal. So they pump through the system, take the pain away, and they're released. Hard physical exercise releases them. Saunas is also really really good for endorphins, like cause you're literally in pain in a sauna, so the endorphins release. Laughing is good. Music is good. Sex, like when you actually physically go for it, where you're having sex, you don't have lazy shitty sex, then that's also good. Yeah, those kind of things. And endorphins are important, and a lot of the more difficult stuff that really gets them pumping, like running up hills, is something that we don't do very much anymore en masse. So we got the dopamine. So we've kind of done the dopamine one. That's the driving one, the motivation, and then you have oxytocin, and then you have serotonin and endorphins. So it spells like dose down the side. Oxytocin is the connecting molecule, basically. releases most predominantly when a mum gives birth. Both the mum and the child get this big spike of oxytocin to create the bond, and then the breastfeeding and all the physical touch basically creates this connection between the kid and the primary caregivers that are around them. And then as we go through our life, all the times in which we socially connect and we receive love and we give love and we support people or we compliment people or we do things like gratitude, anything that like connects us and just makes us feel like more love in our life, effectively oxytocin based. And then the serotonin one is a little bit more mood and stuff, but we can go on oxy for now if you want.
Yeah. So Dose, and I guess to give some context for those who don't know, what is the company that you've started, and how does Dose come into that?
Yeah, so I co-found this company called Neurify, and these are these neuroscience-based training experiences for. Originally, we did this all for companies and schools. So I've trained lots of companies and schools across the UK, across lots of places now in Europe and stuff like that. And it basically is companies and schools go through these 4-part training experiences, and they get 1 hour on dopamine, 1 hour on oxytocin, 1 on serotonin, 1 on endorphins, and they learn all about like how these chemicals function and why it's so important to get them right in terms of your motivation or your connection, your confidence, your mood, emotional state, whatever it is. So they learn how it works, the kind of things that can negatively impact it, the kind of things that are great for it and can have a really positive impact. And they basically go through and they build this kind of bespoke dose of behaviors that are going to help their mind. So that's what we have been doing. And then we now have a range of new stuff launching on October the 10th, which is like a free community app that you can be a part of, and mobile optimized dose for individuals that can go through and scroll and build their dose on their phone and stuff like that.
Nice. I think the community is such a big part of it, because I think I have learned about some of those, like some of the dose elements before, but it's just totally slipped my mind since, and I didn't keep myself accountable to it, or I've seen like an Instagram post about them and then haven't followed them. What are some of the ways people can, I guess, be more, I guess join a community is one, but what are some of the accountable behaviors that people can do so that they don't just slip back to normal behavior a week later?
Yeah, it's the reason it kind of works well is because it kind of breaks your mental health down into 4 main areas as to what could be going wrong. Like, as in, if you're not feeling good, it's like, I'm not feeling good right now. And then you have this question to ask yourself: is it something to do with your drive and your focus and that kind of energy? Then that's okay, dopamine's off. And then if it was oxytocin, am I feeling lonely, or am I feeling unconfident? Am I struggling with how I'm communicating with myself in my head? Oxytocin. Serotonin would be like, am I feeling anxious? Am I overthinking? Am I struggling with my sleep? And endorphins would be in the world of like, am I feeling like really highly stressed and overwhelmed? And then once you deduce it, it's like, which kind of one am I in? Then it's like, okay, I'm going to go to the chemical that's associated and think about what kind of behaviors are good for each of them. And I mean, I can go through. Would you like me to go through some behaviors? Then? So the kind of things super good for dopamine are getting into proper states of concentration when we're working is something that's really important. This thing called deep focus. So not having your phone next to your desk and picking it up every 5 seconds, for example, and actually like getting a little bit of productive work done will always be really good for like giving us a little dopamine hit. Drive goes up a little bit, and then we gradually climb our dopamine back. So deep focus is good. Cold water immersion is like really associated with the dopamine, and that's quite like a big thing now. Cold showers and stuff. It's one of the biggest, like in terms of bang for your buck, like cold showers are the best thing you could do to spike the dopamine really fast. Um, you then have things like being in the pursuit of a goal is really, really good for our dopamine. So having one kind of thing you're striving towards with dopamine is really important. So it could be like a house renovation, doing something to your garden. It could be something specific with exercise, like trying to get a good 5K number. Anything that's like I'm pursuing a goal. It could be to do with art, anything, or it's like I'm going in a direction is very powerful. And then super important for the dopamine is figuring out how to get away from your phone for a prolonged period of time. And we teach this thing all about phone fasting, which is like trying to find 60 minutes every day where you're not near your phone at all.
God, I actually don't think I probably spend 60 minutes away from my phone or having not looked at it in a day.
Most people haven't, especially not. And like the rule of the phone fasting, how we've done this is we've like gamified the whole thing and turned each of these main behaviors into effectively like Pokemon cards that have like a key like description and how you earn it and the challenge you have to do to get it and stuff like that. And the phone fasting one is always very popular when I deliver the teaching, because people never spend any time away from their phone. And really, for the dopamine to regenerate in our brains, because it naturally will recover. It's not like it's you crash it out and it's low for weeks on end. Like if you just chill and you spend some time, for example, if you were feeling really bad, you left your phone at home, went for a walk in the sunshine for an hour without your phone, which obviously now is like, oh my God, how would I do that? I need a podcast in my ear. Da, 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 da. But if you do try these kind of things, dopamine regenerates when we're away from the device, basically. So yeah, those are some good dopamine behaviors.
Yeah, and what's the I guess what's the end goal with Neurify? What's where do you want to take it to?
Wow, end goal is a big question. I have I have about 10, 20-year plan with what I'd love to do. The next kind of main steps are we get all these things out, community app, and get people going through the different learning. Look, we've got variety, video-based learning or mobile learning or whatever you fancy to understand this stuff. And then late next year, I want to launch an app that's going to basically enable you to go through like a cool testing process to discover what your main good behaviors you could have that would integrate into your life. And the app, you always wonder how much you should reveal in case someone would ever clone your idea. But,
No worries. You don't have to.
The app would give you a very good insight into what your day should look like, basically, in terms of being in a good state. And then, yeah, that's kind of 2023 plan. And then going forward into later years, 25 and 26 and stuff, I'm very, very interested in the augmented reality space in terms of the glasses. I really believe that's going to be what supersedes the phone. And although I'm very nervous for what that's then going to do to our mental health if we've got our phones sitting on our face the whole time. But with technology, I see no point in running away from it. I think run towards it and figure out how best to use it effectively. So I'm very interested in like a cool software for the AR that could help guide your behavior.
Yeah, I mean, exciting times. I'm definitely gonna check it out and get on that community when it's.
Yeah, come join us. I think we're going to launch October the 10th. We're going to launch
Okay,
the
I'll be
community.
there.
It's got a nice app on your phone. We're going to be chatting, and it's got like lives and all that sort of stuff. I really want people to understand these chemicals, and that's going to be the place to do it.
Because I guess it's like just you don't get taught. I know this is like the classic phrase: you don't get taught like so much in school, blah blah blah. But I think it's just like technology is just on such an exponential like curve upwards, and I don't think education is taught like caught up. I don't think we're incapable of adapting. I think humans like are just adaptation machines. We're going to figure it out 100%. There's too much money in companies being able to train people, and basically, there's too much money to be made for companies and education not to figure it out. So I know we will. It's just a case of like being able to implement it. But I had one final question, which is, and I saw you've done a post about this, overthinking. It's something that I struggle with. Just like there'll be some days if I'm feeling anxious where my brain's just on a treadmill, and unless I journal or do a hard workout, I just can't get my brain to stop. Basically, and one thing I've always wondered is sometimes I just feel knackered and I haven't done anything that day, and the only thing I've done is overthink. Basically, can that link into like affecting energy levels? Can thinking too much actually drain you of energy?
Yeah, the whole thing is a fantastic question, and our brain uses like a huge proportion of our calorie consumption. Like our brain is a very hardworking machine. Like it's actually ridiculous what it's doing. Even the fact you can see me right now and hear me, it's like crazy how hard the brain is working. So using it more, thinking more, definitely burns calories, and like will affect your energy. The other part of it is often when we're overthinking, we're anxious about something, our brain's in a more fearful state, which means our whole stress response is a lot more active, which means like our heart is going faster and all of these different things because like the body is perceiving there's some kind of danger. So that exhausts us. If we're constantly like in anticipation that a threat is near, eventually we're going to get super tired of anticipating that threat. So it's definitely something that is has a big effect on energy.
Yeah, anticipate that is such a good way to describe anticipation of like, it's not like I'm anticipating a threat. I'm just anticipating things going wrong or situations playing out, and I'm like playing out these situations that probably will never happen, and if they do happen, I've got to address it anyway, so I should be thinking about it twice. But
with this overthinking thing, because I gradually have noticed on social media that topic will be the thing that gets the most attention. Basically, when I talk about that one, it will like get the most views or whatever it may be, because I think lots of people really struggle with it, and it's something that I didn't even realize how much I do it until I started talking about it and seeing other people do it. And then I think, yeah, I do get stuck in my head, like just going over like different anxieties, something happening in the future, like an event, like you said, something like that. And since then, I've been really trying to think like what is like a nice, simple process to take your mind through when you're aware of that taking place effectively. And I have these kind of 5 steps that I've happily share if you fancy. Um, so what I do is first thing you got to do is just become aware it's happening. So I call this step notice, and just like think, okay, I actually recognize right now that I'm overthinking something. Because a lot of the time we're almost like unaware it's even taking place. We're just in the overthinking. And like this is the first thing that kind of steps you out of it and makes you realize, okay, I'm overthinking something. The next step I call rationalize. And you basically have to ask yourself the question, is there a solution that I can discover in this moment to this thing that I'm overthinking? Or is it something that I'm just not in control of the outcome of this situation? So, for example, if it was future oriented, someone's worrying about something that's coming up in a month or something, do you have the ability to change what happens in that time? Or is it something that like you literally don't have control of? Or if it's something that someone's overthinking in the past, like what's that person going to think of me last night when I said that stupid thing at that pub? You're not in control of what that person thinks of you. Yeah. So you have to rationalize, am I in control or not? And they always pretty much you realize that you can't control the outcome. There's no solution to what's coming up. So you just realize, okay, I'm not in control of the outcomes. I can't do anything about this. So that's like rationalize it in your head. And then I think you have the choice of basically 3 things at this point. Once you've noticed it, realize you're not going to find an outcome that's going to make this easy to solve. You got 3 choices. One of them is what you said, moving is really, really good. So like exercise can be a fantastic thing for overthinking, largely because we just are a giant ball of electrical energy. And if our electrical energy is in our head, we're overthinking. If we can shift a lot of it into the body by using the body, it's going to calm the mind down a bit. So that would be move. That is a great thing to do. The second one would be vocalize and find someone that you can call on your phone or like chat to down the pub or something and say out loud to them what you're overthinking. And this really helps you rationalize it and see like, yeah, it's kind of stupid actually that I'm overthinking this or something like that. It also opens the door like for their guidance if there's something you're particularly worried about, and it might be like a good vulnerable connection moment. Good for that oxytocin stuff. So you've got move, you've got vocalize. And then the third one, without a doubt the best one in my opinion in terms of what works for my head, is you just start really just listing a load of stuff that you're grateful for in your mind. And it's like completely side thought to whatever you're worrying about. It doesn't have to connect with that. But you just start going, okay, I'm aware I'm overthinking, but I've found out about this idea and I'm going to go through this gratitude process. And you just start listing it out. Like, I'm super grateful for the bed that I slept in, or that conversation I had with my friend, or this thing went well at work, or ate some nice food, or anything. My body feels healthy right now. Anything at all. And what I've basically discovered is your brain can't be fearful and anxious and happy and grateful at the same time. It's like the brain can't do that. It can't be like a fearful, happy, grateful brain. Like it's just like not going to happen. And if I really do that, and what you find is when you do gratitude stuff, it gets you really focused on the now, because you're like in your environment, you're thinking, what am I happy about that I'm experiencing in my life right now? And it takes you away from this future, past oriented thinking. So that's kind of process I go through. I go notice it's happening, rationalize it a bit, and then choose vocalize, move, or gratitude.
That's a really, really powerful technique. I was just thinking the one I do the least is probably rationalize. Like I think I can acknowledge like, fuck, I'm overthinking this. But then I go back to overthinking, and I don't go like, can I even change this? Or I just get in those first 2 steps. I'm just like looping on basically.
100%. And it's so important to ask yourself that question, like, is there a solution to this? Because I have this all the time with different things. Like, I was lying in bed the other night when I was in Lisbon. I started thinking about something with my like ex-girlfriend about the fact I was coming back to the UK and like what she might think of that and things like this. And then I thought, like, I'm not in control of that. Like, what she thinks of that, what happens, or whether she'll even know that I'm in the UK or anything. So it's like there is no outcome that I'm seeking for. And I've been thinking about this for like 10 minutes. And then it's like, is there any value in me continuing to think about this? No, there's not. So then I
Yeah.
need to go through the other strategies that are going to help me get this out of my head effectively. And then you go through the other processes.
Have you ever written out like an actual, like on a notepad, like, is there any, like almost like a tree diagram? Is there an outcome for this?
Yeah, I almost think it's like, can I solve this in my head? Like, am I going to reach a point where there's going to be a magical moment where I'm like, tick, I don't need to overthink this anymore? And like most of the things you're overthinking, there just isn't a solution to it. And it's like, I do find if I have in this training experience, there is a card, one of these like mental health Pokemon cards effectively called the Underthinker, and it's like how to be an underthinker effectively.
Mm.
And it takes you these steps. And when I get people to take it through, they just like go through, ask themselves these questions. And it's a very, very important thing to get into your head and just get used to, like, is there something I can solve? Because sometimes there is. Like, if there's a work thing I'm overthinking about how I'm going to deliver a speech, for example, I could go down and sit on my laptop and correct something. And then that actually would get rid of the thought because I'd be happy with it. So sometimes there is a solution. A lot of the time there isn't. And like when you meet the fact there isn't, it's then like, okay, now I'm on a mission to get this out of my head. There's no value in this anymore.
Yeah, it feels like that's almost like just clearing the mental inbox.
Yeah, it is. It's like, yeah, so basically like, can I reply to this email or is there no reply? And if there's no reply, you've got to delete it.
I think that is a great place to wrap up. Thank you so much. I feel like I need to, I'm looking forward to listening to this back to just take some notes on everything. And definitely going to jump into Neurify and excited to see where you take it. And yeah, just thank you for coming on. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Nick. Thanks for all your awesome questions. And I wish you the best with your podcast and everything.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Never Fully Heard podcast. If you enjoyed it, please just share it with a friend. Would love to get this to as many people as possible. Thank you.